All right, Ari. Thanks for taking the time to be here this morning. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of stuff going on. Uh, but before I dive into anything, I think it's important to, at least for me, before I can actually talk about anything in depth, I don't know how fencing is actually scored in one. If you could just do that first.
Yeah, of course. So fencing is actually a larger umbrella that contains three sports. Think of it as something like maybe this is where I'm naive, maybe wrestling, how there are different styles and the way that they are, you know, maybe played could be different. The
Mhm.
technique is different and whatnot. So fencing consists of three disciplines: epee, foil, and saber. I'll go over all three. I fence epee. So we'll start with epee. Epee looks like here. I could even get one for us.
Please.
Sorry, but I don't have any foils or sabers laying around. The epee looks like this. This is an
Okay.
epee. So the epee and the foil have a tip at the end that you can push down like this. Saber does not. So for epee and foil, once you push this tip down a certain amount, I believe it's somewhere around this range, there's a small spring on the end of this guy and another spring coil on the bottom here that touch and they complete the circuit. A circuit, when it's completed, sends a signal through this blade, which has a wire on it, out here, which is this socket, which you plug a cord into. That cord runs through your jacket, pops out the back, and runs to a long reel and box that connect to a scoring machine. So that signal gets sent to the scoring machine, and that's how it recognizes that you've scored. As far as rules go, for epee, the target is anywhere on the body. So I have to do that, push the tip down anywhere on your body, and then there's a 1/25th of a second lockout time where if you can do the same thing within this same 1/25th of a second as me, after mine completes that circuit, it will allow your light to go on too, which would mean both people get the point. If it's outside of that 1/25th of a second or you don't hit at all, then it's my point. So that's at base, super simple. Like it's one of those things. I can hit you on the hand, I can hit you on the foot, I can hit you on the chest, the arm, the back, the mask, and it will count. And as far as match scoring, typically in pool or like seeding round, pool play, you're going to 5 points. And then it's like a 3-minute match to 5 points. And once you're in the elimination bracket or the elimination round, you're going to 15 points, 3 3-minute rounds with a 1-minute coaching water break. And it's whoever's ahead at time or gets to 15. Let's see what else. Foil and saber. That's where it gets a little more complex. So foil, epee is the heaviest. It's got the thickest base of the blade and the biggest guard here around the hand because your hand is target. So you want to give it a little bit of protection.
Yeah.
Whereas foil, the guard is a little smaller around here because the hand is no longer a target. So it's less of a threat to break your fingers if someone's going for your hand. Target for foil is just the torso, the back, and then like a little bit the bottom bib of your mask, which technically counts as torso. And can you hear me? Sorry, I think I froze there for a sec. And the timing's a little bit longer for foil, which allows for a new rule to, when I say timing, I mean like that 1/25th a second is expanded for foil. So when I score a touch in foil and you score within that same time period, the lockout time, the referee actually has to decide whose point it was based on who has right of way. Right of way can be thought of as simply as, who has the initiative on the action. So like if I try to attack you my attack ends when my lunge finishes, let's say. You take a parry, which is just like pushing the blade out of the way, and then you hit me. But at the same time, I kind of like go underneath and hit you. You have right of way because you ended the attack with the parry, and you then have a chance to answer. And it's kind of like this back and forth, like whoever is initiating, whoever owns that right of way. And same thing goes for saber, except there's no tip to push down. For saber, the entire waist up, including like your arms, mask, whatever, is target. But the target area is designated or denoted by this thing called a lame, which is a conductive jacket layer that you put on top of your jacket. It gets more complex as you go up. At base, for simple people like me. But no, just kidding. Saber is the most exciting to watch, I will say, because it's a slashing one. The entire blade will complete that circuit because the jacket is conductive.
Okay.
So anytime you look up foil or saber, you'll see this gray vest thing that they're wearing on top of their jacket, whereas epee has that pure, it's just like the fencing, like classic fencing uniform, no add-ons. You just have the white jacket, white fencing pants, and it's everywhere is target. So that's what I do, and hopefully that helped shed some light, I would say, on the sport of fencing and its disciplines. They're all very different to watch, and once you know which one you're watching, you can do the pattern matching to, oh yeah, that's definitely saber, that's definitely foil, that's definitely epee. I would say this: epee is the most patient, and you have to be ready at all times because the target's everywhere. So it's just getting into that distance and trying to trick someone, and then whoever hits first, you have just in that moment gets the point. Foil has like this very classic, slow build to very explosive action repeatedly, and it's this cat and mouse game, and you're constantly going back and forth, and it's like slow, boom, boom, explosive, slow, boom, boom, explosive, and you'll make someone miss, and it's back and forth. Saber is really fast, really exciting, and it looks like people are actually, sword fighting in the way that you would envision or imagine, because they're slashing each other, right? That's more realistic in many cases than like trying to just stab you through your chest or whatnot, or even going to your hand. Like when you're thinking of sword fighting in the combat, I want to kill you sense, you're just chopping at someone, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Of these three, which one are all three in the Olympics or?
Yeah. So all three in the Olympics, all three have the same representation internationally, meaning like the same opportunities are available. The once you make your national team, the same World Cups, Grand Prix, World Championship, Olympic events are available to all three across men's and women's. It's just a matter of, which countries have stronger programs for which ones, which coaches are where, which clubs are where. The club that I started out at was an epee only club. So I didn't really have an opportunity at the club that I was at to fence one of the other weapons. And I ended up very lucky, right? I love epee and what I do and the place I ended up at. But it's almost random chance in many cases.
For sure. So when you like watch the Olympics, if you watch fencing, if you've seen it, it's so fast. It's like second and it's over. Mm-hmm. And then traditionally in your mind, when you think of fencing, if you think of sword fighting, you think of like the Princess Bride, like these long drawn out scenes. Is it so fast because you're like limited to that little strip that you have to stay on and there's only the back and forth, there's no rotation, or is that just how it is?
Yeah, I would say so. It's funny. The actions are fast, but sometimes the matches could take a while, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to X amount of points. And I think because it's that points-based system and we're not trying to kill each other, people are more willing to take a hit, right? You're willing to receive a touch in order to get the information in a chess sense, that's why sometimes it's called physical chess, where like you're
Interesting.
giving up some pawns in order to capture their queen and, put that checkmate on the king. It's a long game. Whereas if we had more space to move, obviously it would take a little longer. And then honestly, if we were fighting for our lives, we'd probably be a little bit more deliberate in our decision making, a little more thought out, a lot more fake stuff. People would be
Yeah.
a lot more scared to go for real actions. And The Princess Bride, for example, great movie.
Great movie.
Wouldn't say it's the most accurate fencing, obviously, because
Yeah.
it's not the sport that we do. Maybe it's more accurate to dueling because, again, in those scenes, they might be trying to kill each other. The characters are trying to kill each other. So there are a lot of fake actions. A lot of this stuff that they're going for isn't really there. They're doing a lot of fakes to one semi-real action, and it's art. It's supposed to look fun. I would say that the main things are what I said about, we're not fighting for our lives,
Yeah.
and it's a points-based system. So you're willing to give up some points to
That
gain
makes
the
a
information.
that makes a lot of sense for like just again knowing nothing about fencing until this moment until you explained like that's the most knowledge I've ever gained on fencing, and you explained it very very quickly. Uh, I thought it was like best of 5 touches or something like that, so I thought it was going to be a lot more quicker or a lot more quick. But you do have time to gain that information to like give up those points. So that's interesting. I also had no idea that it was so technical in terms of just like connecting those circuits and those
Yeah,
pieces, because like you watch it and it's so quick. And I'm like, how are they deciding who got that point? But that does make a lot of sense. I think you would have to have it in a sport that it is that quick. That said, because of the required components, it seems like the barrier to entry would be kind of high for somebody if they wanted to start.
absolutely. You're, you're picking up on everything real fast. That's one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, in fencing, at least in a country like the United States, right? Where we have all these other sports. It is expensive because the uniform itself, it's not just any regular old uniform. It has to be, you know, credited through some level of safety testing, because the goal isn't to die here. The goal is to be able to fence for the rest of your life as many times as you want. So if a blade snaps or if you're getting hit, it has to protect you. Even if at first it might feel uncomfortable when you're getting used to the feeling of getting hit, you are safe. You're protected. The mask has to be, they test that metal mesh on your mask quite a bit before. I was looking around, like, maybe I have a mask right here, but I don't. So it defeats the purpose to go look for one. But it's expensive to get into, and it's traditionally seen in the US and some other countries as this rich kid sport, right? And that's definitely an idea that I wish was less true. And, many people are already working to combat that and provide fencing to underserved communities and just make it more accessible, because it's this beautiful, exciting, elegant, yet athletic, ego-filled, yet respectful,
Yeah.
martial art-esque sport that teaches you so much about your life, how to compete, how to lose, how to improve at an art and a skill and craft while competing with other people. And there's so many different ways to get good, and it's beautiful. And in other countries where it's government funded, it's not necessarily that same rich kid sport. So the narrative shifts depending on where you are, who you are, and when you're born and whatnot. I would say in the next 10 years, we will probably see a lot of initiatives spin up to try and make it more accessible. The Olympics are in the United States in less than 4 years now. And I think that there are going to be a lot of initiatives to try and get people into fencing. I'd say that in a country as large as the US, one of the things that's also lacking is the coaching skill and caliber. I think that, in order to really make successful athletes, you need some level of coaching acumen, and doesn't necessarily need to be fencing. I actually know some really cool stories of coaches that are just good coaches that then picked up fencing and learned how to coach fencing. But I'm just talking about quality coaching, you know,
in the sport.
as a coaching pool isn't necessarily there across the entire United States. So even though you could bring fencing somewhere, you might not be bringing the right people to instruct, which is definitely challenging when it comes to just retention, right? And enabling people to do this successfully or really passionately for a long time.
What makes a good fencing coach specifically? Because I would imagine it'd be a little bit more analytical, a little bit more patient than like you don't need
Definitely.
the rah speech as much. You kind of need the
You need both. Like, you don't need someone to run through a wall in
yeah,
fencing. You do need to motivate people, but since it's an individual sport, in many cases, you once you're on strip, you have that fight or flight because there's no. I mean, you do kind of need someone to run through a wall in a lesser sense. It's not like a football team, right?
yeah.
But you need to have really good understanding of how the sport works. So you don't have to be able to do it yourself, but you have to be able to understand, the important things in the game, which are it all starts with footwork across all three weapons. You have to be able to pick up footwork and how touches happen, and that in a sense is analytical, right? And then on top of that, you have to be just a standard good coach, right? Like, I think that you have some amazing coaches throughout history. I'll pick one, Muffy McGraw, Coach Muffy McGraw of the Notre Dame women's basketball team, all-time great coach across any sport, right? And I believe that if she dedicated herself to fencing, would be able to be a good fencing coach because as someone that coaches people
Yeah.
and understands that this is my system, I have this program that I can put you through, but also is coaching individuals to push themselves to their own limits because everybody needs to be coached differently. And I think that a good fencing coach, to answer your question, because I'm dancing around it, I would say analytical skills, people skills, and ultimately understanding of the sport and understanding of a holistic athlete. And you can have any combination of those four things, plus or minus other things. There are great fencing coaches that lack one of those qualities or two, but they're extremely efficient, effective, and have reached mastery of the other two, right? So it's really, in a nerdy way, I think fencing is a lot like an RPG, like
Okay.
a game on a computer where
Yeah.
you can choose, I would say maybe even like an MMORPG where you get to level up in certain things and you can pick which ones you level up on, or someone will pick for you earlier in your career because you might be like a 10-year-old and you have no idea. And you can reach mastery and being a great player, a great fencer through so many different avenues. Like, there are some guys that are, or ladies or athletes that are amazing footwork athletes. Their footwork is unrivaled. Their hand is good too, whatnot, but their footwork is it. Then you have oh my God, the fastest hand. Their hand is so good. The legs aren't that great, but their hand is like, they can parry anything. They can flick you, whatever. And those are two completely different avenues. Both can become amazing fencers. Obviously, once you're talking about the highest level, you have to be a certain level of master of multiple of these skills, but you can work on the mental piece. Some people become the best technical fencers, but their mental sucks. So they're only winning one tournament here, or they're not winning at all. And then they have to work on the mental piece. Some people work on the mental. Like, I know how to win. I'm going to dog you regardless. I have zero technique. I have some athleticism and a will to win, and I know how this sport works, right? And that's a path to getting good too. And it's a sport with no weight class. I forgot to mention that. So the Olympic finals, let's see if this guy's height is on here. The Olympic finals in my event, men's epee, was between Koki Kano from Japan and Yannick Burrell from France. Yannick Burrell is, according to this, 195 centimeters. He might be a bit taller. He's like a 6'5" dude.
Jeez.
About like 95 to 100 kilos. So let's say 200 plus pounds. Koki Kano, according to this Google search, is 173 centimeters, which is 5'6" or so, whatever. I think, no, it's 5.6, excuse me. Either way, this guy's like 5'10" or shorter, fencing a 6'5" guy. There's a huge weight difference. Like if you're talking about a physical fight, unless Koki Kano's got multiple guns, he's going to lose this fight. But he's the Olympic champion. He beat Yannick Burrell in the finals because this David Goliath narrative is really possible in a sport like fencing. And that's what makes it so cool. You can be quote unquote disadvantaged, but it might actually be an advantage, or it completely gets canceled out because, you know, just like boxing, once you're in the same weight class or whatnot, if you're shorter, Mike Tyson, once he's in distance, you're screwed. You know, Muhammad Ali's taller, you know, he can keep you further away and you're screwed because you can never get close to him, right? And it's like all these matchups from combat sports, fighting sports, you know, every sport that I can think of, they all come together in a sport like fencing. In any combat-esque sport, fighting sport, they come alive. But fencing, you get to participate and engage with all that with no head trauma for the most part. There are concussions, but you're not getting your head punched in. You're not breaking your nose. There's no gore. So somehow it retains like this elegance, but you still get that switch that flips on in your head. Or you're like, I'm fighting this person. I don't want to lose. My ego is on the line. I need to win. And that's exciting. That's something that I think people really come back to.
Absolutely. And no, I mean, you're talking and I'm like getting amped up. I'm like ready to go.
Hey, you live in Denver. I could find a place for you to try it out.
No, that's 100% something we will be talking about for sure. But you kind of started to get into my next question. I was going to ask kind of about, you know, biology, you know, body types, which one excels, but you kind of already discussed that because I would imagine reach and height would be a huge factor. As somebody like myself, I am 5'10", 195, longer torso, shorter arms, great for great for Olympic lifting, moving weights. And I was like, I don't know if my body type is going to excel at this. But
it naturally, so I would say this, in younger ages, if we're 12 and you're 6'5", I haven't had the experience of developing a gameplay or style or plan to compete with that, right? I'm 12. So you're going to have an advantage at a young age. And I know some athletes. There's an amazing athlete right now. He's going to hate me for saying this. 7-footer. Nick Lawson, you're 7 feet tall and you know it. He says he's like 6'9" or 6'10", but he's been huge forever. He's one of my peers on the U.S. national team at the moment. I'm recovering from some surgeries. He's just focusing on his senior year of college. So neither of us are currently on the U.S. national team, but we've been on it before. This guy is a champion, world championship medalist at the junior level. He's a strong representative of the sport of fencing. He's done well at the NCAA level. Good career already. But at younger age groups, he had the advantage. He was like 6'5", probably at 12 or 13. It's impossible to not have an advantage at that point. But as you get older, everyone starts to grow into their bodies, to start developing strategies. You know, that gets leveled out. That advantage, it remains an advantage forever, but everyone else starts to be comfortable with who they are. And they're like, okay, well, he's not getting any shorter. I'm not getting any taller. Let's find a way to beat it. And then that advantage gets evened out, you know. Then once you're in the adult age group, seniors, you know, we fence tall people before. Is it going to make it any easier to fence this guy? No. Is it always going to be in some ways an advantage? Yes. But he's got to work a lot harder. You know, this guy's in great shape. He's got to work a lot harder to stay in that good shape and to move at the speed and explosiveness that fencing requires. So this dude, in order to get to where he's gotten, has to be an incredibly hard worker, because it's easy to just fall back on the advantage. Whereas, actually pushing and continuing to get better in order to excel, you almost have to work even harder when you're that size to get good, because when everyone's starting to get what we're describing as good, they're used to working hard. Their
Yeah,
bodies are optimized. When you're at that size, just the amount that you need to eat in order to not pass out
yep.
is ridiculous. So
That's a really
it's,
good way to look at it.
yeah, advantage is a really easy word to throw out.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to other sports, I'm friends with some people that were, for example, like offensive linemen, defensive ends. I was at Notre Dame for school, and I got to befriend some really, really cool guys and amazing athletes. And it's really easy to point and be like, oh, these guys have it so good.
Yeah,
They're making so much money, blah, blah, blah. But you're putting your body on the line repeatedly. And
for
an
sure.
advantage is a word that definitely exists and lives there. But I think it's also important to really credit hard work where it exists. And like the offensive lineman, just to stay that size and that athletic and that meaty, and their entire life is just about pushing their bodies from the
Yep.
moment they wake up. You got to be ingesting copious amounts of food and carbs. It's like not healthy by any means.
No.
And you're pushing your body. These dudes have a higher vertical than you or me, probably.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're gaining an advantage, but they're putting their body through something that I could never fathom in order to get that advantage. So it's not like, oh yeah, you're just born with it. Everyone's born the way they're born, but you're only gonna get as far as you work.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I, when I was competing in CrossFit, the one of the worst parts, because I do, about 5-6 hours a day, 2-3 hour sessions. The worst part was eating. Like I'm always eating, trying to get like 8,000 calories a day, just always eating. And it's the worst part of it. Talking about maintaining, good shape, what, like, are we endurance, cardio more important than like skeletal muscle mass here, a mixture of
Yeah,
both? What are you guys
yeah. So
training for speed and stuff?
it's so everyone trains differently. That's I'd say the area of fencing that's lacking the most. I don't want to say the most. One of the areas that has so much room to grow, because they're multiple, right? Where it's an amateur sport at the end of the day.
Mhm.
There's no professional, you know, true professional experience, which means that financial opportunities, overall awareness, etc., are just lower than other sports, which means in the strength and conditioning world, you only have a few experts on the sport of fencing across the world. It's not a handful, it's more than a handful at this point, thank God. It's a lot. Maybe it's 20, 30, 40 people that are really engaging and thinking about fencing critically. Maybe it's less, honestly. Like 40 sounds like a big number to me, right? Whereas football strength and conditioning coaches, how many do you have across there that understand what you need to get better at for football? But long story short, for fencing, I would say the ideal body type for epee, and it might be different for foil and saber, but still I'd say it's similar. It's like closer to a soccer player in the sense where like your upper body's strong, it can do everything it needs to. You can have uh you have the strength to do like pull-ups, you can lift, but overall you want that lean muscle. And then bottom half, you have powerful legs, powerful calves, powerful quads, powerful hamstrings and glutes. You have to be able to have the strength and mobility and flexibility to get your body in all sorts of positions. And you have to have that explosiveness to dunk, right? Like jump training is great. Sprint training is great. I've incorporated both in my training in the past. I'd say sprints, like a sprinter's workout, is paramount for a fencer that's trying to gain explosiveness, because a lot of those, even though you're not in fencing position, a lot of the nervous system things that you're
Mhm.
training, and the aspects of your explosiveness and in the fast twitch muscle fibers that you want to train in those actions are good and nurtured by those exercises, as well as Olympic lifting. That one's hard because it's very technical. You have the wrong person teaching you, or you're teaching yourself wrong. You're gonna end up like me, a couple surgeries in. I didn't hurt myself Olympic lifting. I definitely have, but that wasn't the original way that I hurt myself.
No.
But really, Olympic lifting's great, right? You have that perfect balance between like explosiveness, control, power, overall strength, as well as mobility. It's not easy to like do that type of stuff in terms of hip mobility, knee flexion, shoulder mobility, shoulder strength, and that all is really valuable for fencing as well. I would say it's the MMORPG, man. There's so many ways to go about it, but really the things that I would recommend are for the explosiveness, you're doing either some type of like Olympic lifting or sprint workout, combination of the two, or some jump training. And all of those kind of end up relating at a certain point. Maybe you can stay away from Olympic lifting by just doing some very, focused, maybe heavier lifting or large volume, lower weight lifting, just to get your body into those positions. But then you're focusing more on that sprint, that jump, maybe, also balancing out. You got to do some fencing conditioning too, which is just footwork. That's something that you see a lot of people really shy away from. And it's not the fun. That's the least fun part of fencing, because it's the hardest to gamify. And there are games you could do, but you have to do footwork to be good at fencing. And through that, you're going to get a lot of that explosiveness, the coordination, the endurance. A lot of that will come from your footwork and just from fencing in general.
That's super fascinating. So, because it's such a quick and explosive sport in terms of the individual points, I guess you're not really having to factor in like any kind of aerobic capacity and any kind of endurance in that aspect, or
No, you definitely have to. I mean, it's endurance based in that, and again, I think that you're getting a lot of that endurance from like footwork. I love swimming.
Okay.
Running as well. I don't know how much aggressive running I'm going to be doing outside of like the sprints so I'm recovering from a meniscus surgery and full labrum repair, slap and posterior repair on my left shoulder. So I don't know how much long distance running I'm going to be doing on this knee as it heals, but that type of training is good as well. The reason you need the endurance is because fencing is like an interval training, right? You are doing these explosive movements over and over again, and then you sit down and you rest, and then you do it again. And your heart rate goes down, and then it spikes back up, and your body has to be able to handle that consistent spiking back up and that high intensity, especially in competition. Like in competition, as your emotions get involved, like firsthand as a competitor, you get 10x 12x more exhausted in a competition than you do in practice because of the emotional mental stress that you're undergoing.
Absolutely.
And you need endurance for that. And, plenty of people, I've had issues my whole career with cramping up. Trying to hydrate right is a huge challenge. Being in the right shape to do it is also a huge challenge. I think that's why this soccer player body type is what I brought up, where you have a lean upper body that's strong enough to do what it has to, like through fencing, your forearm, your wrist, your fingers, like those are going to be strong. Your triceps for that explosive stuff, that's going to be strong. You don't need like a huge chest, big shoulders. People do it. I've been huge before. I've been 238 fencing at 6 feet tall, and it's happened. Like I was doing it at the highest level, and I wasn't succeeding as much as I probably wanted to. My endurance was lower, but your explosiveness, your power is there. But then they have guys that are like, 6'4", 180, 185, 190, right? 6'5".
Yeah.
Like lean guys. And it's a fine mix, if you're if you're lacking the endurance, you have to have a lot of other stuff. But endurance is definitely key because you're just pushing your body through. And it's not just endurance of like the cardiovascular, like your joints, like your tendons, your brain, you have to have endurance for all of that because the competition days last from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. if you're in the finals. So you constantly are resetting, calming down. You have to refocus because you're doing all that in one day, like a pool, like seeding match. And you go into the elimination table and you are, I fence you. All right, now I get a 10, 15, 20, whatever hour long break, depending on how long it takes for them to get through these other matches. Because there's huge tournaments in the US. We have like 400 plus people. And then it comes back to me. I have to refocus and do that all over again. And your body's getting like exhausted, drained. You have to hydrate, fuel, mentally focus. So then there's an entire aspect of training in the sport that we didn't talk about, which is the mental piece. And that's so important across all sports, right? But when you have this one-on-one matchup with someone, I think it's really, really emphasized. You have to focus more on the mental piece because the highest level, everyone is good. Everyone, you get to these senior World Cups, even the U.S. national level at a certain point, everyone's good. And being fast or being strong or being really technical, it doesn't make you special anymore because you're now facing people that are not scared of that because they fence a bunch of other people like you, or they're better in one way or another at one of these things or multiple. And at that point, it's just who's tough, who's trained to be in that moment mentally, who's seen themselves there before, who's been there before, who's working with a sports psychologist, who's meditating, who's analyzing video of themselves and seeing moments where they start to get nervous and their shoulders hike up, who's preparing their mind for those instances. And I think that's where the sport becomes even more fun. I've been yapping quite a bit. I'm going to pause to give you a moment to just process. I take a simple question and turn it into a complex answer. And I love doing that. I just want to leave you some space here.
Not complex, but detailed. Like, I appreciate it. Like, I'm learning so much. I'm very fascinated by this. I mean, mental, the sports psychology aspect, the mental game is always going to be there. The higher up in the sport you go, the more relevant it is and the more important it is. Because as you said, the higher up you go, people start to differentiate less in their athletic ability. Everybody works hard. Everybody sleeps 8 hours. Everybody does the nutrition. Everybody's recovering. Everybody's mobilizing, whatever that looks like. And so what separates you at that point is definitely going to be mindset and the mind games that you are able to play and how you're able to develop that. So I completely agree with that aspect. To bring it back around, there was something you said a little bit earlier about it being an amateur sport. It's definitely, not professional. Like you said, nobody's, at least in the U.S., is making a living off of that. Is it more like Olympic weightlifting in that the U.S. team or the U.S. doesn't really appreciate, it's USA Olympic weightlifters versus if you go across the ocean to Europe, to Asia, or down south, you have these superstar Olympic weightlifters who are, a lot more taken care of. Is fencing larger in other areas?
Oh, great question. I think that it really depends. So there are some fencers in the US that are making a living off of it. I don't think they're living to the level of LeBron James, right? But there's, for example,
I'd imagine they're making it off of like social media, off of like their
social
presence,
media.
right?
They're getting, if you win all the prize money tournaments, you're going to get paid. They have sponsors.
Okay.
They have, they have like contracts with these sponsors. We have a woman's foil fencer who deserves all the flowers she gets, Lee Kiefer. is already a 3-time Olympic champion, and she's coming back for more in LA. And she is one of the greats of the sport of fencing as a whole. Women's foil, she's on their Mount Rushmore. Like, this woman is amazing, and she and her husband's also an American and world legend. These people are both Hall of Fame level fencers. They literally are in the Hall of Fame. Garrick Meinhardt, they are both full-time fencers, and I didn't give any of his results, sorry. And this is like, they have plenty of individual medals. Obviously, the world only cares to hear about Olympic medals. This guy has, I believe, 2 Olympic bronzes as well. You know, and world championships, World Cups, Grand Prix, U.S. tournaments, NCAA championships. This couple has it all. They are training full time via sponsors, a stipend from USA Fencing because of just like where you are ranking wise. You get some stipend, and probably, hopefully, some social media kickbacks as well. Being an Olympian definitely helps give you that visibility that fencers like myself don't have. And it just helps the sport in general, depending on who you are. I think U.S. fencing did a great job this last Olympics from just the media side of things. I think the fencers that were hyped up delivered. You know, like I said, my friends Lee Garrick, my other friend Nick Itkin, also one of my teammates at Notre Dame. He and Lee are currently number 1 in the world in their respective weapons. They're able to pursue this full time. To answer your question, though, there are places in the world where your Olympic champions, those people are disproportionate to the U.S., famous, taken care of, etc. There's an Olympic champion named Vivian Kong from Hong Kong, also amazing fencer. She has a stellar resume. Hong Kong, from what I understand, pays you around $1 million USD for that Olympic gold.
Yeah, I was going to say,
got 3,
yeah,
each time making 37.5K. You tell me
yeah,
which one's taken care of. And we can go to Instagram, check the Instagram
yeah.
followers just so you can see like the eyes on it. And again, does Hong Kong have less sports and less, people at the highest level in sport to talk about? Yes. So does that impact it? Probably. But, Vivian Kong,
I mean, China has always taken care of their Olympians. They're
absolutely.
better than the
Vivian
U.S.
Kong, check this ratio. 0 followers, 490K. Lee, 3-time Olympic champion, 85.1K followers. So she's blowing up on Instagram relative to a lot of these other fencers, which is good. And, in Europe, it's also different, right? Some of these sports are state funded. I think that's where you're changing the narrative. This is no longer a rich kid sport, rich family sport. If it's state funded, that's your way out. Yeah. I have a friend from Hungary who's from a small town on the Lake Balaton area. He's also Olympic champion, Olympic silver medalist, amazing fencer. But fencing is his way to give his family something that they would not be exposed to otherwise. He's, Gergo Siklosi. I'll say everyone's name just to get them out there on the air. But this guy is an amazing athlete and an amazing financier. He's figuring out a way to capitalize on this. You get a bonus. You have contracts from a young age with your fencing club because the clubs get some stipend from the government or however it works. And then it's you just sign more contracts, and that happens to be one of your country's sports that they're pushing for propaganda, and they're good at it historically. Hungary is, and just like they're good at water polo, they're good at fencing, and maybe handball are their big 3. They also have a modern pentathlon Olympic champion. But anyways, I would say that he is benefiting from he's set in Hungary almost for life off his resume right now in the fencing world, just like getting positions within their federation. Like, he's going to get paid. In the US, you could be in any Olympic sport other than basketball, really. You could be a multiple-time Olympic champion and you're broke.
Yeah.
And I think that is just a symptom of the world we live in, and it's something that's really easy to complain about, but I don't think that that's really beneficial. But fencing is not the only sport that struggles from that. You have plenty of, wrestlers, like you said, weightlifters, probably table tennis, badminton. Pickleball is picking up. It's huge. I don't think it's an Olympic sport yet, but pickleball, I think, went pro first, which is great, right? Because
Yeah.
then the best pickleballers are going to go and do Olympic pickleball when it becomes a thing. But all these smaller sports, um, even water polo, I'm sure in the U.S., like you're not volleyball. These are amazing sports, but you're not really generating a living here doing it. And that's even women's lacrosse is another one. Like these really top level sports that you can excel at, but most people doing it at the top in the U.S. or even Major League Lacrosse, if you work a full-time job, that's your fencing is my passion. And I, as professionally as I try to train, as I'd like to train, you got to pay the bills first, right? So I have to, my entire journey on the national team, post college, let's just say post college, I've been working a 9 to 5. I had I had a moment where I got laid off. I've trip planned to Germany, and in between that, I'm going to Hungary to train in between a tournament in Germany and a tournament in Hungary. These are not Hungarian and German tournaments. These are World Cups. I'm representing the U.S. with 11 other guys. One of those, I got to be on the U.S. like team for the team event. That's a whole nother thing we could talk about another time. But that's like a relay race where they take 4 athletes and you represent the U.S. for team ranking. And I'm laid off. I was like, oh my gosh, I committed to these tournaments. I'm gonna go do this thing, represent my country, but I'm now bleeding cash.
Yeah.
I need something coming in yesterday, and that's a really stressful time. And I'm not the only American athlete that's gone through that because, it's funded by parents up until a certain point. That's why it's a rich kid sport in the
Yeah.
US, because those barriers to entry we discussed, they're high. If you want to compete at the highest level, you have to go internationally. You have to go nationally. Like there's only so much exposure you're going to get to fencing in your hometown. And if you're lucky, you're going to have some of the best fencers. But even then, you need, not you need, but like really the best way to continue to improve is to go to these tournaments. And at the regional level, they're definitely increasing in strength. They're not where they need to be in order for you to become an expert doing it regionally. And it's unfortunate, but it's, again, something that I think some very smart people are trying to combat. And, as I age and get maybe phased out of fencing as a competitive athlete, that's something that I want to focus on more, because this is a sport that I want to bring to everyone. You never tried it. I want to bring it to you. So and so at their 5th grade, elementary school, they haven't tried it. I want to bring it to them in an after school program. Like,
Yeah.
Many sports in the U.S. people get into just because it's like we have it at school.
Yeah, just because it's there.
Okay. And they have high school fencing across the Northeast. But again, quality of coaching, the level of buy-in that you can really get it's challenging. It's challenging. And just like most high school sports, there are only a few high schools, if any, that really excel at this sport. And then otherwise, it's just like a high school. They have one really good player and then they go play club. Like AAU basketball is in many cases what's getting people on this, how are they getting recruited? They're doing AAU. Football, I think that's more of like, okay, your high school is good or bad. But, running, they have running clubs. Swimming, they have swimming clubs. So fencing is the same way, but either way, just to get people in, get you through that door, high school, middle school, great places to start. And would love to see more of that. But there are layers. There's like coaching education,
Yeah.
exposure, equipment, somehow finding a way to either make equipment cheaper or gather a lot of equipment via just influx of, donors, sponsors, who knows? It's a hard problem to solve.
How did you start fencing? Like, did your
Great
parents
question.
fence? Or
Yeah,
were you
this is
just
usually the first question. I love that we're hitting this one an hour in, because this has been such an engaging conversation from my end to be asked these questions, get a chance to talk about them. Now we'll talk about me, I guess, a little bit.
No, please, yeah.
So one of my lifelong best friends, his name's Anton Piskabatsko, amazing fencer, great guy. Uh, his mom, when we were about 8 years old, married a fencing coach. And Anton got forced into fencing because it's cheaper if your stepdad's
Yeah.
the coach, right? So he got forced to try it. I remember he used to cry. He would tell me he didn't like it, but he fell in love probably fairly quickly, within a year and a half. I was about the age of 10. My mom wanted me to get exposure to new sport. She's a Soviet immigrant, so playing football, playing baseball weren't on the list of things that were
Hmm.
welcomed in my household. So I was playing other sports. I did some soccer, but I was doing gymnastics, taekwondo, ballroom dancing, those types of sports.
Yeah.
I was doing gymnastics at the time and really loved it. My mom said, "No more, sorry, pal." And it wasn't a sport that I chose to quit. I was having a great time.
Yeah.
It's competing. I was definitely a bit tall for gymnastics, even at the time within my age group, but still, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. That's a great sport for teaching someone how to push their body.
Hmm.
Obviously, gymnasts definitely walk away with a lot of damage on their body, but it's a lot of fun. Then I tried fencing at the age of 10 with my sister, and my mom convinced one of our other family friends to get their son to start as well. We started the same day at a summer camp at this club, Alliance Fencing Academy in Houston, Texas. At the time, membership was probably like 30 to 50 people. And I remember during this camp, there was a moment, I guess the head coach, Andre, the stepdad, he was not there. They were in Miami for a tournament that happens every summer. It's called Summer Nationals, or now it's called the July Challenge, I think. They've rebranded. But the club's 20 and under team, going back to this team event that again we can get into another time, they won the 20 and under category for this competition. I remember it happened during the camp because someone ran in and said, "Oh my God, they won! They did it! They won this national competition." That was one of the first big ticket medals that's kind of putting this club on the map. So I would say I'm Generation B for this club, and I got into it. I loved it. It was so much fun. I was bad, but it was so fun, and I got into it, and the reason I brought up that they won this tournament because I think they had gotten second prior to that, and I was already like, oh, where is this club coming from? Who are these people? Houston, Texas, not known for its fencing necessarily,
Hmm.
especially in epee. Houston, I think, was a foil city, and then they won, and it was like it's an honor to win with your team because that shows that your club is having strong representation. They had beaten the New York Athletic Club, which is a club that I currently represent here in New York City, which has been a powerful fencing club for many years. That's
Hmm.
what the club tries to represent. They get a lot of top fencers, um, you know, via funding the sport. They offer a funding platform, so it's something that's definitely appealing to people that want help
For sure.
funding their competitions. But anyways, I got into it, fell in love. I was really bad. I remember my birthday that year in December. That was a summer camp. In December, I got an epee as a gift. I was nerding out on fencing so much, and that epee broke fairly quickly. I was very heartbroken, but I was off to the races at that point. And throughout my time at this club, my generation, that generation above me helped pave the way for us. But my generation was really the first generation of elite athletes, like a collective group of more than like two or three, like
Hmm.
elite athletes to come out of this club and raise the bar. This club went from having, and the generation above us were elite athletes. Like I'm not knocking anyone above us, right? But our generation brought in more golds, more national medals, international medals than Andre, the head coach, ever would have thought. And through that, the club grew so much while we were there. And since I've left, they've grown even more. It's now when people talk about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, of course, it's this big powerhouse. Like, yeah, of course they're doing well. Like, oh wow, like it's a given, right?" But I was
Yeah.
there when it wasn't a given, and it's again that perspective advantage, right? Like people work for that. This club has been built over time, and it's been really cool to see. Um, I just got so lucky. The club that I just started at, so many people have to bounce around, find the right coach, all this stuff. Like the club that I was at had this amazing world-class coach, Andre Geva, who's been an Olympic coach. He's coached so many world champions. The club hasn't had so many world champions. They coached like world champions. He's coached Olympians. He's coached so many international medalists, international champions, international people that get to represent. That's already a big honor, right? So just representing the US, if you're from this club now, is like, oh yeah, a gajillion people have done that. They're like, that's not, it's like an accolade, but it's not that much of an accolade. And it's crazy to see that perspective shift. For us, it used to be like, if you get a national medal, you get on the wall of fame for this club. Now there's so many national medals, they don't care. It's like, if you represented the US or your country at world championships, it means you finish the season top 4. That's how you get on this wall now. One national medal is not going to get you there. So just to watch that growth has been beautiful to watch. To get to be a part of that has been awesome. Anton and I, the guy that got me into fencing, he and I got to be on the U.S. team together multiple times. And that was a huge honor and something that I always loved about our story with fencing. And, we got strengthened our friendship. We were already really good friends from the age of 4. I wanted to hang out with one of my best friends. And all of a sudden, not only am I hanging out with him, we're pushing each other to be the best. We're pushing each other to try and compete with the best. We're pushing each other to the point where we are among the best. And that was very, very exciting. And he's still fully in fencing as well. He's a full-time coach at this club now, Alliance, and he's also an athlete competing. He's I see him around in the circuit. We visit each other as well. When I go home, he comes here, and that was like your TLDR, a little bit of a lore here and there, but that's how I got into it. And there have been a lot of ups and downs along that road, but really it's beautiful that we're both still in it.
Have you read the book or heard of the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell?
I have heard of the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I've read excerpts. It's a book that's been recommended to me by multiple people, and now yourself as well. I need to read it. So the next time we chat, I could tell you about my insights.
Yes, it's a phenomenal book. But in that book, he talks about, people who are outliers in their field or, for example, but he talks about so much of that is due to the environment that they're in. Like Bill Gates probably would have been amazing and probably would have started something no matter what. But because he had access to one of the only computers in the country at the time, when he was at an age where he was learning, he had access to it through his parents. He was able to get an extreme level of, exposure to computers where nobody else was. And then he was able to create Microsoft and get super fascinated in that. And it's always interesting to hear about people who are outliers, whether that be fencing or whatever that is. And then you go back and you're like in this situation where you're exposed to that thing at such an early age. Like you had a friend whose mom married, a fencing coach, and then boom, now your story's
pure luck.
Yeah.
Pure luck. For the record, I'm somewhat of an outlier, but there are so many people that have had better fencing careers than me. Like I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm good at this sport.
Yeah.
I'm a top level fencer, but I'm not an Olympian at all. I've been dreaming of it, missed the last 3 shots I took at it, and trying again for Los Angeles. We're going to make it this time.
I was going to say, in your bio, it says 2028.
Yeah, that's what I'm training for. It's a goal of mine. I think I'm better than I ever have been, pushing for it now. But point is, they're better fencers than me. But even those fencers, they have very similar scenarios, right? Like I think most people should not be so naive as to think they did anything on their own. And I say most people because I don't want to say 100%, because as soon as you blanket statement it, you're most likely going to be wrong. But most people do not get to where they get on their own. And most likely, if you think that you got anywhere on your own, not you, Chase, but anyone listening to this, anyone out there, you didn't. Have the humility to think back on the situations that you were in, the moments that you learned from, the people that supported you or the people that didn't. That inspires people too. You are a an amalgamation of events that have happened to you and a bunch of responses that you've had to those events, those stimuli, support, lack thereof, like resources that you maybe had or didn't. If the internet helped you, you already aren't doing something on your own. Humans weren't made to do things on our own. The only reason we built so much stuff, have a society the way we do it, is because we find ways to feed off each other. So I didn't get here on my own. I was thinking about this the other day, the amount of coaches that I've worked with. I've had the opportunity to work with 5, 6+ amazing coaches, right? And the people that I've engaged with and the way that my family supported me. And I just happened to be a part of a club that was becoming, whether or not I played a role in that, sure, I did. I lived at that club. I was there 6 days a week. I was pushing everyone around me to be better. But I was only there due to chance, right? Like it happened. I got lucky to be there. I got lucky that the club that I had was being built and set up by one of the great minds of fencing, like in Houston, Texas. How? That's pure luck, right? And I think that acknowledging that and processing it makes me more grateful for my role, participation, experience in the sport. B, motivates me to provide people with that same opportunity, because it's not fair if it's just for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, and I completely agree. It takes a village. If you've done anything worth talking about, or if you've done anything difficult really at all, it's because of the people you had around you within.
Or even not difficult.
Degrees.
If you amounted to nothing, it's most likely because in many cases, the people around you have taught you to be this way. So like, if you want to amount to something, maybe look at the people around you. Maybe look at, and it's not about getting rid of them. It's like, oh, shoot, we're all bums. Maybe we should push each other to get better.
Yeah, what is that quote? It's just the classic, like, whether you're good or bad, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend your most time with.
5, yeah.
Completely agree.
That's true.
So if somebody, after listening to this, like myself, wanted to start fencing and like did a quick Google search, they saw there was a fencing gym. Do you guys call them gyms? Boxes? What do you call it? Just
fencing
a gym? Clubs. If there was a club in their town or city, what would be the best steps to starting that?
Really reaching out, asking if they do a beginner course, asking, do your research. If you're having a hard time doing your research, you can DM me. You don't have to follow me, just DM me on Instagram at Ari Simmons. I could help you with that research. I think that it's the hardest thing is getting started for anything. If you're interested, look it up. Hopefully there's a place near you. All big cities in the US have at least one fencing club. The more random of a city you're in, the smaller it is, the less of a chance you're probably going to have a fencing club. And we're coming to you in the next decade. But for now, it might be challenging, and I apologize on behalf of the history of our sport if that's the case. But really, look it up, reach out, see if they have a beginner course, see if they have a beginner package that you can try, a beginner camp come summer. I don't know what age your listeners are at, but just reach out and see what's available, and then if it's something that's feasible for you, take action. And then also look within USA Fencing. I think they have some programs at a certain point. I don't know if they have any financial assistance programs for getting started in fencing, but they definitely have a grace program for registration costs for national events if needed. And they're definitely working to implement more things like that as the sport grows. And who knows, there are potentially some other beautiful fencing opportunities that will appear over like I said, the next decade. Fencing's been gaining a lot of traction. I know that there are a lot of smart and motivated people trying to push for things in the sport, for more opportunity for the athletes to get more eyes on the sport. And that inevitably could lead to clubs being opened up, school programs, etc. So Yeah, that's my advice. Reach out. If you have questions, reach out. You know, most people within the fencing world, fencing sphere, are still responding to DMs. They're not. None of us are so famous, and so busy, and you know, above the rest of you. You know, we're normal people. We want more people fencing. So if you're really interested, just reach out.
All right, Ari. Well, you are clearly very passionate about fencing, and that's one of the things that I saw when I was, scrolling through Instagram. I've always been interested in fencing. I wanted to talk to somebody who was passionate about it, who knew what was going on, and you are very passionate. I would love to talk again after I've give me some time. I want to start
Do it,
fencing,
man.
so give me some time to, and then I can talk from a little bit more of a little bit more experience as a beginner in this, because this is definitely
Yeah.
something I could see myself enjoying it and really just having a fun time in.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely chat. You and I will text about this and figure out a good place for you to try this sport out near you, and then you can share your experience the next time we get together.
Absolutely, man. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, you too, Chase, and I hope that this podcast continues to kick off, and you get to talk to cooler and more interesting people than myself, and continue to learn. I think this is a great way for you to, you know, learn. So
I appreciate
thanks
you,
for your
man.
interest, and have a great one.